Okay, seems to work. Good. Good morning, everyone, and well, it's a pleasure to be back here with you for this Materialized World Summit. So I'm going to talk to you about innovation management. So we're going to step back from maybe the more technical aspects and try to get a bit of the broader picture. And just wanted to say that what I'm going to present now is based on the research that was carried out by a research group, international and multidisciplinary research group. So, just wanted to acknowledge the work of my colleagues. So why is co-creation so important when we speak about 3D printing and additive manufacturing? Well, co-creation is really important because of the properties of additive manufacturing. And as we all know, one of the key properties of 3D printing and additive manufacturing is that the cost per unit, if we simplify, roughly remains constant, whereas with traditional manufacturing, such as injection molding, then you have a high cost of tooling, and the more you produce, the lower the cost, okay? And for additive manufacturing, when we think in terms of a business model, these properties are both a blessing and a curse, okay? Depending on whether you produce a lot or whether you produce little, that's going to be positive or a negative aspect. And as a matter of fact, there is always a point where the cost of direct manufacturing is going to be higher than the cost of using other mass manufacturing technologies, such as injection molding. And although technology progresses, and as we've seen, the cost per unit of additive manufacturing has decreased, it's still very likely there will always be this kind of trade-off, okay, right? So that means that there are actually three cases in which 3D printing and additive manufacturing always wins. Time is an issue. You need a part for tomorrow, then, that's a no-brainer, additive manufacturing. Complexity, there are things that you can only manufacture, there are shapes you can only manufacture with a 3D printer. It's the same, okay? And the final point is additive manufacturing wins when you're manufacturing in small scale, okay? And that, in this case, that co-creation is important, okay? As a matter of fact, if we look at the current key markets of additive manufacturing, such as medical, prosthetics, aerospace, fashion, and so on and so forth, you see that the key driver is that these industries need highly personalized, customized items, which effectively means that you produce in small series, okay? So the number of industries that are on this screen grow every year. But at the end of the day, these are still niches, okay? As the technology progresses, as the costs go lower, then we get more industries that embrace 3D printing, but these are still mainly niches. So the question raised by co-creation is, how do you get beyond niches, and how do you make sure that additive manufacturing, 3D printing, becomes mainstream? Well, that can only happen through co-creation, okay? Because one of the key drivers of becoming mainstream is through mass customization, okay? Again, time is an issue, but that will only involve some applications. Complexity is an issue, but that will only involve some applications. So if you want some mainstream application, that means that you will need to customize. You're not going to use additive manufacturing to manufacture 30,000 times the same product, okay? So you need to customize, but there is as far as a business as you can go customizing for people. What does it mean, customizing? What do you customize? How do you customize it, and for what purpose? Okay? So that's why we speak about co-creation. So in innovation management, we define co-creation as an active, creative, and social collaborative process between producers and users aimed at creating value for customers, okay? So we have probably a slightly narrower definition of it. For us, when you speak about co-creation, you speak about a company and its customers engaging in co-creating for the value of the customers. So if two companies cooperate for a third party, typically we tend to call that open innovation. But if two companies cooperate for the benefit of one customer, then we would call that co-creation. So what is not co-creation? Well, mass customization, if you ask people just to choose between set options, then this is not co-creation, okay? If you go buy a car, you can choose the painting, and you can choose the size of the engine, and you can choose the leather on the seat, and you can choose many things. This is customization, right? But this is not co-creation because the customers didn't provide any input into the shape of the seat or the shape of the cars or some of the specs, okay? So when we speak about co-creation, that's important to understand. We actually speak about a situation when people, customers, contribute actively, okay? So there is some overlap between what we generally call open innovation, so companies cooperating together to innovate, mass customization, when people have the possibility to choose many attributes, and co-creation, when actually customers provide some active input into that. And what is really great about additive manufacturing and 3D printing is that it enables to bring all that together. So we get many more opportunities when we can innovate and customize for the benefits of customers through co-creation. Okay? Right. So now that we've said that and that we showed how important it is to co-create, you need to understand what different types of co-creation there are, because with different types of co-creation come different challenges, okay? So when we speak about co-creation, okay, you work with a customer and you co-create something together, one of the questions is, for whom is that? Okay. Do you collaborate just for the sole benefit of that customer, or is it something that is going to be then sold to many other customers? Okay? So that's one of the first questions. The second question is, when we speak about co-creation, we can have very different types of co-creation. Sometimes it's very much differentiated. Somebody comes with a design, you work together to manufacture it, it's rather differentiated. One person has done the design, the other person has manufactured it, okay? Now, on the other hand, if several companies or people and customers, company and customer work together to design a new product, then it becomes quite difficult to separate their contributions. So that's basically what led us to, we published a paper on that a couple of, 2 years ago actually, where we came up with a typology of co-creation, okay? So on the input side, which is the vertical axis, it tells you whether we're talking about co-creation where people have different roles, okay, one designs, the other one manufactures, or whether they are integrated, they do things really together. On the vertical axis, on the horizontal axis, we are talking about the output, okay? The output is it customized, so for one particular person, or is it something which is meant for the mass market? Okay? Well, let's just take a couple of examples because it's probably a bit obscure, okay? So in the top right corner, you have something which is differentiated and mass. A typical example is Threadless. Threadless is a crowdsourcing platform. They don't 3D print T-shirts yet, but they still crowdsource them. So the idea of Threadless is that customers will come up with designs, and then Threadless will mass manufacture them. So you can see it's differentiated. Customers design, Threadless manufactures, okay? And it's meant for the mass market. You're not going to do just one T-shirt. The T-shirts that are manufactured for the many, okay? Now, lower right corner, integrated and mass. That's typically the case of open source software. Okay? So open source software, you're in a situation where users and firms collaborate together to come up with a product that is then meant for the mass market. Okay? With, for example, the Apache web server, you get tons of people working on it, and the objective is that plenty of companies will be using it. Okay so far? The other corner is custom and integrated. So one example of that is, for example, what's happening with our colleagues of digital forming, who have these online platforms where a designer can put a base of a design, and then users can actually customize them, change the design before it is ordered and delivered. So that is integrated because both the users and the platform actually are doing the design, okay? And it's custom because typically, when I change this lemon squeezer, it's only going to be manufactured for me. Okay? And just to be quick, the last one is differentiated and custom. So that would be, for example, when you use an online 3D printing platform, you come up with the design, they do the manufacturing. Okay? And that's for you, that's personalized. Okay? So the reason why I'm mentioning all that is because when we have that, we can discuss about different challenges of co-creation. The first one relates to intellectual property. It's great to co-create, it's great to engage in creating with customers, but at some point, the question will pop, you know? Okay, who owns the IP of the resulting product? Okay, and that is actually one of the main reasons why firms, I mean businesses, are afraid of co-creation because, you know, you need to draft very long letters with lawyers and so on and so forth. Okay. So the good news is that these IP issues, they are not necessarily prevalent in all cases of co-creation. So if you are able to identify which type of co-creation you're talking about, that means that you can already anticipate what's going to happen. So first issue is an issue related to assignment of IP. And of course, IP assignment issues are more likely to arise when the roles are integrated. If we co-design something, then it's very difficult to figure out actually who owns, you know, who has done what in the final outcome in terms of value. Okay? So there is still a good news, though, in the sense that though you can make things together, sometimes it doesn't matter who has the IP. And that's typically the case when we're talking about a customized product. Let's take a non-3D printing example. You go to a bakery and you co-design a wedding cake. Okay? Right, okay? You've co-designed it with the baker. You said which kind of decoration you wanted on top of it. Maybe you changed some of the decoration. So it's very difficult to figure out who has the IP. But nobody cares, okay? Because this wedding cake is just made for you and for no one else, okay? So, yeah, sure. It's not very clear who has the IP, but that doesn't matter, okay? On the other hand, if the next day you see your wedding cake being sold in the bakery for everyone else, then we've got a problem. Okay? So as soon as you switch to the mass, then you have IP assignment issues, and of course you have IP infringement issues. Okay. Right? But this is less likely the case when the product is differentiated, and much more likely to be the case when the product is integrated. Okay? If we do something together, and I can see that yeah, actually, this product we did together, you're making a lot of money with it, and maybe, you know, actually I did it with you, so I would like my share of the pie, okay? Whereas if we had different roles very clear, then it's much more, you know, much less likely I'm going to ask for my share, okay? So that was the first challenge, okay? So the first, what's interesting is with this typology, you can figure out where the issues will arise, okay? And that will make you want more to engage in co-creation, okay? Or you might think, hey, yeah, no, co-creation is not for me. I'm not interested. Too complicated. Let's not do co-creation. Well, you might have to do co-creation even if you don't want to. So just a small, actually, thing I forgot to mention. The examples here are mostly inspired from the business-to-customer, B2C cases. Two reasons for that. One, because consumer goods is one of the future key markets in additive manufacturing. Other things, and the reason why I'm focusing on B2C, is because it's far more messy than what happens between businesses, but also it sort of indicates what are the long-term trends. Right, so what long-term trends do we have? When we speak about co-creation, there are two types of co-creation, in fact. There is what we call sponsored co-creation. Sponsored co-creation is when the company invited customers to co-create. And the company sort of manages and drives co-creation. Okay. And then there is something else we call autonomous co-creation. Autonomous co-creation is when co-creation happens in spite of the firms. It's just customers feel a need, and they have the means now with 3D printing to satisfy their urges they have, and they decide to co-create with the products or with the brands independently from the firm. Okay, let's take some examples. Do we have fans of Game of Thrones here? Oh, come on, don't be shy. Then more than that. Okay, well, actually, a couple of years ago, there was a guy who was a fan of that, and he also really liked his smartphones. So he decided to build a smartphone dock that was inspired by the throne of the, Game of Thrones, okay? So, and this customer started to sell this throne. What happened? HBO sent the lawyers, asked the person to remove the objects, okay? You didn't co-create with our approval. The person says, okay, I'll pay for a license. How much do you want? No, we don't co-create. No. Okay, sure. He took the product out. Within 2 hours, it was on the Pirate Bay. And as a matter of fact, it's a game of cat and mouse. If you look nowadays on platforms, you would find there are tons of objects. I don't think they're on iMaterialize, though, but on other platforms, there are tons of objects that are inspired by Game of Thrones that you can actually buy. Because you can send cease and desist letter. You will just spend your time doing that. At the end, it doesn't work. And even the throne is still there 3 years later. Okay, it's quite expensive, but at least you would get to own the forbidden throne. Isn't that cool? So that's autonomous co-creation. HBO didn't want to co-create. Customers took the matter in their own hands. Now, we had fans of Game of Thrones. Do we have fans of My Little Pony? Oh, yeah, less. Oh, you shouldn't be shy. Huh? So Hasbro did something completely different. They thought, okay, people start co-creating around our brand. They start putting online some 3D models of our characters. Instead of fighting it, we're just going to use it. So basically, they teamed up with a platform. And the idea is that they let people, fans, customers, upload design on the platforms. They even let them sell their products. So the designers can choose how much it goes for. And of course, Hasbro takes a cut. And that's very smart, because it doesn't cost them anything. They see what's happening, okay? And they can discover what popular products they might actually integrate in their mainline product, okay? So autonomous, the HBO case, versus sponsored. So the reason why it's really important is because with digital technologies, and nowadays with additive manufacturing, products are basically becoming platforms. We should stop talking about products, we should actually talk about platforms, right? So that's a discussion I had a couple of months ago with a known French car manufacturers, and they didn't quite believe that a car could become a platform. So I had to show them. So that's the type of things. This is autonomous, not sponsored by the French car manufacturer, okay? Of things that happen online. So people are designing logos, they're designing cars, okay. They are basically doing some merchandising. That's okay, okay. It's, of course, it's an IP infringement, but well, okay. And they are doing spare parts. But they don't stop there, you know. They actually use the car as a platform. Look up there, you get like a phone holder. This is an iPad holder. And some people go very far. Some people have managed to install an espresso machine in their car. So you can see why the product has become a platform, because the car is an enabler on which people build. And that's cool, but it's autonomous, and it can become a bit freaky. You know, like you get endings for electric chargers. You get door locks. You get, look at this one, seatbelt child lock. The green thing here is basically to actively prevent a kid from unbuckling the seat belt. Actually, the description says, use at your own risk. Always have a knife next by. Because if you have a car accident, of course, what you would want is basically the kid to be able to get. So that's happening. So even if the company doesn't want that, this is happening. And that's not the thing as a company you would want to be available. Because if kids start dying in your car when they're car accident because they couldn't get out of the car, this is bad for you. But Renault is lucky. Volkswagen is not so lucky. Because there are brake parts available online. So next time you see a Passat or an old Volkswagen behind you in your car, you might want to accelerate. Because I can tell you, if you actually print that with ABS or PLA, this is not going to last very long. So basically, the firm is an ecosystem. The products are platform. We already seen that, for example, with Apple. I don't know if you remember it was a year and a half ago, there were 2 Chinese customers who were electrocuted. It just turned out that it wasn't the fault of the iPhone, it was because they used counterfeit chargers. You remember? Do you remember what Apple did? They did a recall of counterfeit chargers. That's what they did. They did a recall of counterfeit charger. You could bring your counterfeit charger to Apple, and they would give you a genuine one for a nominal fee. Because what happened around your products in this ecosystem, whether it's your fault or not, damages your image. Okay? So that's why you must co-create. It's not an option. Because the fact that you're open means that you have control. Okay? If you want to upload a little pony online through this platform, you have to agree not to upload an obscene or violent pony. Not my word, these are the terms of use. So Hasbro effectively prevents, obscene and violent ponies to be available because they sponsor the co-creation. Whereas with HBO, since they don't sponsor co-creation, you could have obscene and violent Game of Thrones. Oh, sorry, well, that's the case. Right, so as a company, if you sponsor co-creation, even if it's not going to bring you anything in terms of money, effectively you become a gatekeeper. And when the products that are around your platform grow, then of course, there is something in there for you. Okay? Hasbro is getting some money for every single little pony sold. Okay, so in the very few minutes that I have left, I wanted to speak of a final challenge, which is the issue of time. Co-creation is great. Mass customization is great. This is fantastic, okay? Now, you need to actually take a step forward and think. Everyone is talking about co-creation. Everyone is talking about mass customization. Nowadays, how many objects can you co-create or mass customize? Very few. I mean, the example that people give all the time, are basically Nike shoes. You can go online and personalize your Nike shoes. That's great, but think about it. In 5 years, 10 years, since this is the value driver, can you imagine how many objects customers will be able to customize? Maybe all of them. And that's the problem, because nowadays you might have the time to go online and customize your Nike, but tomorrow, if you can customize everything, what's going to happen? Will you have the time to customize your shoes and your toothbrush and your plates and your car and, and your suit and whatever you can think about? Will you have the time? Probably not. I mean, how much time can you actually spend engaging in co-creation and customization? Okay? How much time can you just spend redesigning things? And of course, why would you even do that? That's the problem. So in order to unleash value from co-creation, you need to find a way to solve this problem. Because in some cases, yes, you would take the time for that. These are obvious purposes. But will you take the time for that? Maybe once, maybe twice. Okay, how much time can you spend on that? So that means that it's not just co-creation we need to think about, it's automated co-creation. Okay? And automated co-creation, the idea is that you put together 3D printing, big data, for example, in IoT, okay, with machine learning. The idea is that you collect sufficient data on people's habits that you can offer them co-creation options which are predefined. So for instance, how many people are going to customize their toothbrush? Well, maybe you'll do it once for fun, but anyway, do you actually have the knowledge? Are you a dentist? So how do you know what's the right shape for a toothbrush? You probably don't, okay? But luckily for you, there are companies who are selling connected toothbrushes, who are trying desperately to find a value proposition. They haven't been really able to do that. Now, if you collect data in order to co-create a toothbrush head, then you find an interesting value proposition. It's the same, for example, with the tennis racket, which collects data about how you play. You probably won't be able to customize or be willing to customize it yourself, but if there is data collected on how you play, then it means that there are some co-creation options that become available. Okay? So just to finish, here are the key takeaways of this talk. It's really important to identify the type of co-creation in order to anticipate IP issues and, in my view, more importantly, IP non-issues. Okay? There are plenty of cases where you should not worry about IP issues in co-creation because, by definition, the fact that it's targeted at one person or one company makes that it doesn't matter. Okay? You need to stay in control of co-creation by sponsoring it and leveraging the community which is there. Because if you don't do it, then people are going to do it. Okay? And with the consumer market, it's very visible, but I can assure you that even businesses co-create autonomously because they try to tinker and improve things. Okay? In terms of product, we shouldn't be talking about products anymore. We should really be talking about platform. Since people can make things, they are going to start making things that augments your product in a good way or in a bad way. Okay? Then it's up to you to see whether you are able to sponsor and control that. Okay? So you need to become the gatekeeper. And finally, in 5, 10, 15 years, there will be so many things that will be available for co-creation and mass customization that you need to think of algorithm and software that will enable to use data to make that automatic co-creation. And I'm done. Thank you very much.